Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Michael Bruntz, Husker247. What's up, Bruntz?
How's it going? What's going on?
Hi, MB. How are things?
Not bad.
Let's start, I guess, with some rough news for Nebraska baseball and the McConnaughey injury. Like, kind of put in perspective for me. Obviously, it's a big loss, but like, kind of give me some context here on how much is going to impact Nebraska.
Well, a lot. I mean, this is a guy that was a preseason All-American, and when you look across the Big Ten, there really were not a lot of programs that had a proven returning Friday night guy, and Nebraska was towards the front of that list because of Mason McConnaughey. You feel bad for him. I mean, this is a guy that this time last year was just kind of a bullpen arm at this point. I mean, he was not on the weekend rotation yet, pitched his way into a very solid Saturday role, had numbers that were, not far off from what Sears's numbers were last season on Fridays. And, it just sucks for him. He's going to miss the rest of the year. There's a long recovery ahead of him. And if you're Nebraska now, you've got to figure out how you're going to kind of align the deck chairs here to get you through a weekend. So, my thought, I mean, we can get into this, I guess, if you want to, but I mean, there's kind of two schools of thought. Do you just kind of move everybody one spot up? I think Ty Horn's a pretty obvious Friday night guy now, especially given, what he's drawn right out of the gates this year. I mean, you get Vanderbilt in your first start, you get LSU in your third start, and he's looked good enough, I think, to
get well enough to win. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And even in the game against Louisiana, I mean, he was good. So that makes sense to me to move him to Friday. And then, what do you do on Saturday and Sunday? I mean, you could just, you've kind of been juggling Walsh and Brockett. You could just have that be your weekend. You could also kind of dip into that second pool of starting options that Nebraska's been operating with, which would be Yasa. Do you move Worthley into that role, or is he too valuable as a high leverage lefty? I think you could make a case both ways. Drew Christo's probably in that crew as well. So they've got options. I mean, I think this is a deeper pitching staff than what they had last season. It's just a matter of kind of how you want to align things, because I guess the one thing that kind of worked in Nebraska's favor this week is you got the midweeks postponed and canceled, so you could kind of reset everything. But you've got two against Wichita State next week, right on the heels of this Washington series. So you're going to need guys to step up. And in some ways, I mean, it's an opportunity for somebody to kind of be this year's Mason McConnaughey, because this is about the same time last year where he took advantage of guys not throwing really well on the weekend and just kind of ran with it.
I think at first blush, couple of we bounced around the Worthley thing. I think his strength is situationally. He's a shutdown guy in those high leverage situations, right? So I would be less apt to mess with him. But I do kind of wonder, I don't know. I know he's bigger, a little bigger this year, a little stronger. I'm hoping Brockett holds up, right? So I'm trying to sprinkle in some other arms behind Brockett or in addition to Brockett. So I don't know why I'm afraid, but I just don't want him overused. I just don't want him overused as the Sunday guy. So my option would be to sprinkle in some other additional starters to stretch your back end there, at least for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think this is the ideal situation for what they would like, but I mean, Luke Broderick, who's their closer and is very good, was a starter at Iowa Western for 2 years. I mean, it's two schools of thought there. I mean, you need a strong relief option at the back of your bullpen. The other option is I mean, you're at least going to get a good start on the weekend, which is really key. So I mean, that might be another route. And they've also got, the thing that's going to be interesting when you get into the midweeks, they've got some freshmen that they feel pretty good about that can go in. They feel like can go in there and get them 3 or 4 innings. Like there's going to be a really big opportunity on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for some of those young guys to step in there and find a role. I mean, they would love it for somebody to make Tuesday their day. And I think they've got some young arms that could potentially do that. But I mean, that's the other factor in all this is, great on the weekends, but when you're playing back-to-back games on Tuesday and Wednesday, that's still 18 innings you got to fill somehow. And as we know, those games can be the difference between hosting or staying home in the tournament. So that they're all important.
Last baseball from me. You worry more about Nebraska's situational hitting if you're trying to project how they're going to be offensively the rest of the season, or just basically starting with quality at bats where you're putting balls in play somewhat hard.
Yeah, I mean, the
be a situational hitting team.
Well, they have to be. I mean, they haven't been a very good one.
I've told myself it's still early.
It is. I mean, you're 3 weekends into the season, right? Like,
I don't want to rest. I don't want them to be a situational hitting team, I guess is what I'm saying.
But you also need guys when you've got runners on base to put the ball in play. You need to be able to make contact, and I think that's been an issue at times. I mean, it was good to get Cale Frost going a little bit this weekend, and it's I mean, you dig into the numbers, and it's basically every kind of run producing middle of the lineup type guy that they were kind of, I think, counting on is scuffling right now at the same time. I mean, you had Caden Brumbaugh, who was your leadoff hitter, batting third a couple of those games. So they're looking for something. They're still trying to find the right lineup combos. Devin Nunez has been great off the bench. The at-bats have been good.
Let me ask you something, Bruntz, because you saw fall too. And this is taking it from a guy that was a spot starter. Can he be overexposed, or do you think his trajectory would lead to more at bats equals more production?
Nunez?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's a freshman, and the quality of at bats that he's had have been really good, and he hit well. He hit well in the fall.
We definitely got my attention in Louisiana. I mean, they were all but nothing. He was the only guy. I mean, he comes in cold, barrels it up, and it's like, but that's okay. And then you kind of build.
And he's making adjustments throughout the game. I mean, I think that's the thing that stood out. I mean, his at bats late in games have been just as good as they have been at the start of games. And I think again, it's a situation where if guys are not performing, they're going to try to find there's an opportunity there for somebody to step in and take those reps. I mean, Devin Nunez was probably Nebraska's third baseman. He's the only true freshman position player on the roster right now. And he steps in and, takes the opportunity and runs with it. He's hitting 500. He's got 2 home runs. One of them wasn't in the Parker that actually got out of the park, but that's neither here nor there. So, I mean, he's going to continue to get at bats at that designated hitter spot. But then, if you want to get Booten back at bats, you want to get Bolin in there. How are you going to kind of make those innings work in the outfield? That's going to be something they're going to have to figure out.
Bruntz, I want to switch gears to you with you to football here, as now you've heard all of the new additions on the football staff speak publicly after this week. I'm curious how you feel about the makeup of the staff now from a personality standpoint, now that you've seen everybody at least once.
Yeah, it's there's some strong personalities. Like when you consider the 3 coordinators, I mean, I think they're all. I think at times it's fair to say that all 3 run a little hot. Is that fair?
I think they can. Yeah.
I think all 3 of those guys are very experienced. I also think that I don't think there's any question though about who's in charge over there. Like, I forget who it was that somebody said, we basically got done with a 6-hour meeting where Matt Rule talked the entire time. So, this is the experience level is much higher than it has been during Matt Rule's 3 years at Nebraska. But I think that he has been freed up to be more of the CEO type role that I think is a good fit for him. And, I think even the younger, I guess air quotes, younger assistant coaches on the staff. But Terry Braden's is a younger assistant, but he's been with the Chiefs forever. He's got a lot of experience there. Addison Williams is a former defensive coordinator. There's just a lot of they've really upped the experience level, and I'm kind of intrigued by how this is all going to come together, and kind of work. But I think they've had a really good offseason of adding guys that bring experience. A lot of them are outside of Matt Rule's orbit, which I think is kind of new in terms of kind of how he's tended to do things. So I don't know. I mean, I've read some people saying, well, we'll see how this works. But I mean, I think at a number of spots they got better from where they were last year on the staff.
We were late. That was this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We were walking out, and we were talking like kind of fact or fiction on this whole CEO thing and what it actually means. And I like the fact you said, well, make no mistake, who's running this football team, right? It's Coach Rule's team. And I was joking with Ravi. I was like, yeah, we're not going to be reading other people's names when fans are upset. We're going to be hearing about Coach Rule. But then a little deeper than that, Bruntz, to it, I think the reverence that they seemingly have for him, and when they're talking about either how they got there or why they're here, or what makes this an advantageous place, if you go all the way back to why Holgorsen picked Coach Rule, you still get the sense that he's not Bobby Bowden in this thing where he doesn't have headsets on or something, right? Where it's like he still wants his fingerprints on certain positions, and I think that's maybe the part where he shines the most.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
at least my gut, you know what I mean? Like,
gotta go Bobby Bowden on me, really?
Sorry.
Could have been Paterno.
Well, he's not asking somebody to hand him the headphones, and he talks into the little back end of the microphone, and then he gives it back.
Just
like
saying.
he's not doing that ever.
Could have been Paterno. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's as we sit here right now on March 6th, I mean, what position would you say that he's going to be laser focused on? Like, because I asked this because you have Phil Snow that's essentially going to be kind of a walkabout associate head coach on defense and going to be working with different position groups every day. I as much as it is Matt Rule's team, I think that Dana Holgorsen probably has a fair amount of oversight on his side of the ball. So, I mean, where do you guys think where do you think he's going to focus?
Spends a lot of time with the second level guys in D-line. Now, he knows defensive backs the least, so maybe he'll brush up on that, but he's definitely a front six guy.
I was thinking defensive line, and I think part of that, I think you're going to have a lot of hands there. Like, I think it's going to be Braden's group, but when you look at the staff and the way that they are, I mean, it feels like there's going to be a lot of working together on kind of making that group work. And and Matt Rule's always said, well, we've always played pretty good defense, and that's been something that they've he's hung his hat on. I mean, I think part of that is why. I mean, they've got a lot of guys that have a lot of defensive front experience. So, and you're going to have Phil Simpson working with some guys there too. I think he's going to have a hand in the pass rush stuff. So, that makes sense to me. I am curious, special teams wise. I mean, obviously that's Mike Eckler's show. He's only doing special teams, but that feels like another area where a little bit more attention from the head coach would really help. And again, he's coached it, so there's a little bit of that too. I'm curious, but I don't think that he's going to be just on the sidelines just watching it practice. Like he's going to be very involved.
Bruntz, I'm curious. You said something there that I tend to agree with, that you think they may have gotten better at a few places with the assistant coaches. Is that the sense that you're getting from like your guys' board and sort of the general fan interactions that you guys have? Because I'm not sure I have a good pulse on how people feel at this point about whether they think the staff got better or if they're still sort of wait and see because they liked some of the guys that departed.
Oh, I think generally I would say that there's a feeling of improvement. I mean, I think I'm trying to think of like the most hot button positions from last year. Was it special teams, wide receiver? Um, I think that the feeling is that's those positions have been improved. I think there's interest in kind of seeing what Dana Holgerson's going to do on the offense. I mean, I think the last 3 games of the regular season and the bowl game, things looked better on that side of the ball, not just in terms of play calling, but I think also, some positions were made to look a little bit better than they had during the course of the season. I think there's a little bit of question on the defensive side of the ball because it's a new coordinator that you've kind of seen what he's going to do, but what that ultimately looks like, I don't know. I think part of the defensive conversation is also tinged a little bit by who Nebraska lost on that side of the ball. Like, I think there would be a lot more confidence if you had either Ty or Nash back this year. I mean, that's such a big piece of that conversation. So I don't know. I think generally there's kind of a wait and see, but I think at the positions where a lot of people were focused last year, I think the feeling is that they've gotten better. I mean, I think the track record of Mike Eckler as a special teams coach kind of speaks for itself and what he was able to do at Tennessee. And then, I think everybody, the fact that Dana Holgerson vouched so strongly and wanted to Keel Shorts, I think that there's also that piece of it too, that, I think people are giving him a little bit of runway there with what he's got.
Bruntz, let me fast forward to basketball, and there's a lot of chat and discussion over, Nebraska's season win total, right? It was set at 17.5 and 12-2, you felt pretty good. But much like expectations, as things play out, we start to expect more. This was still a team that was picked to finish, 12 or 13 in the Big Ten. They're right around that mark. The wins are going to be right around that mark. Where do you think we allowed ourselves to kind of change? Because we're not settling, right? Because they've given away too many games where it didn't have to be that way to like go back and, well, this is who we thought they were. So I'm clearly not saying that. What I am saying is, if we think the non-con was too soft and they're still doing Nebraska things basketball-wise, where did we get off on our expectation level?
Well, I think the fast start, even if the non-con was a little soft, I think that, I mean, when you're sitting at 12-2, you're kind of like, okay, well, you can find 8 wins somewhere in there and get to 20, right? Like, you should be able to.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the frustration of people lies in, the oh so close nature of some of those losses, right? Like, you're up big on Iowa on the road and you don't get that one over the finish line. The multiple games where
you shouldn't have lost Rutgers at home.
No. The games where you spot an opponent basically a 3 touchdown lead in the first half and have to dig your way out of it. Sometimes I think there's also kind of the smell test where, it just doesn't look right sometimes. Something's not smelling right, with the way the play is on the court. And, I mean, you have a big win streak, you have a big losing streak, you win a few more. Like, it's truly been a roller coaster this year. And I think that's where the frustration lies. And I think also too, I mean, you had it set up for you. You kind of start the bracketology talk at the beginning of February, and Nebraska's there. They're still there now, against all odds. And I think that's the problem.
Balance.
So, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's and even, against Ohio State, you had the chance to do it and you just didn't. So, I mean, that's where I think the you recalibrated expectations based on the start, and then it's just been a wild ride, Mr. Toad's wild ride down the stretch here.
Wow. You're not reading that book to anyone in your family at this point, are you?
No, that was one of the more disappointing rides I remember at Disney World as a kid. Like, what are we doing here?
I can just see young Bruntz just looking at his parents like, what are we doing, man?
Yeah, what? Give me Space Mountain. That's what I want. I don't want Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Ron, so I do think you brought up a good point about kind of how it looks, right? I mean, if you evenly distribute the 13 losses kind of throughout the season, it's win.
You mean where you don't come out? You talking about like
the start versus because I mean it's Ken Palm does a really good job with the color coding, and I know I sound like a child, but like if you got all green the first half of the season, and then there is a lot of red, and I mean if they've lost 11 of their last 16, right? That's half the season. That's a good size. And you look at it and you go, oh, so it doesn't feel like 17 and 13 can feel like that's never going to feel great. But if it's kind of more evenly distributed, you throw some losses in a little bit earlier, you don't clump them together so much late. Like, is that kind of what you mean? Because it feels, I don't know, I look at their Ken Palm almost every day, and that back end is tough to look at.
I agree. That back end is tough to look at. I think.
Why does red always have to be bad? Pick a different color.
What color you want to do?
I don't know. Yellow.
Okay.
Green. No, they have green.
Look how pretty that top half is.
Oh, I know.
Oh, look at the top half. So pretty. That back end, tough to look at.
There's
a big push in school for all those softy kids, Bruntz, to not do, corrections in red. It elicited a negative response.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in school when I got things corrected and my papers would bleed, and it made me tougher for it. So
the bleeding doesn't appear to have made Nebraska tougher yet.
No. No, I mean there's the eye test part of it, right? Like your record's your record, but when you've watched all these games, I mean it's looked good at times. And then I mean I think the frustrating part of it too is when you've gotten into these situations that are considered must wins or games you'd love to have or games that you could have. Thinking of like that Penn State game on the road, you just didn't show up. I mean, that whole road trip, you played like 10 minutes of good basketball, and they were probably fortunate to beat Northwestern. So, yeah, I mean, there's the record, there's the color coding, and then having to watch it. I mean, when you score 114 points and lose, I mean, that's you get into it a little bit more. That's painful.
Bruntz, I'm going to get you out of this when you look at the Big Ten as a whole. You think the conference will be, when it comes time to not just get teams in, but when you're watching in a couple of weeks here in March, you think the Big Ten depth will be validated or vindicated?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just going down the list right now. Like I'm looking at the standings because I hadn't looked at them in a couple days.
We did it this morning again, and it was kind of warty outside of.
Are there 3 teams right now in the Big Ten that you would say like this is an Elite 8 team?
Okay, let me do it this way, Bruntz.
Yeah,
1.5 is the win total in the tournament. 1.5. So can this team win 2 games? And just give me your just like quick.
Nebraska?
No, I'm gonna give them to you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You ready?
Sorry. I was like, what tournament? Go ahead. Sorry.
Second weekend NIT. Here we come.
I can see you now. Get all distracted. I'm sorry.
Fine.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Damon.
All right.
I'm ready.
Purdue.
1.5. Yes. Over.
Michigan.
Over.
Michigan State.
Over.
Wisconsin.
No. That's it. I don't think there's anybody else that I would say.
Maryland.
That's my last one. Maryland.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
No,
I even struggle a little bit with Michigan.
So you struggle, man. Maryland is good, Bruntz.
I know. I know,
Yeah, I know.
but it's
I do like you don't let me talk you into anything.
just-
I'm going back to this Raiola thing. You're like, okay, that's
it just feels like this is like a year where it's just like a bunch of teams that are going to get to like the Sweet 16 and just really kind of struggle. Like maybe I'm completely wrong on that, but that's the gut feel right now. That's deep in my belly. That's what I'm feeling
I
right
don't
now.
think anybody gave us warm fuzzies outside of Maryland.
You guys wouldn't trust Michigan State?
I like Michigan State. They don't. I'm not all, I don't have that love spark.
I'm closer on Michigan State than he is because I'm sort of enamored with the Jace Richardson emergence.
Yeah, I can see that. Purdue is a little dicey for me too. I'd say yes, but they
They can get rolling offensively though.
Yeah.
That's our guy, Michael Bruntz, Husker247.
I'll share him.
You share him?
I'll share him.
Is that our guy? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe I'll share Miller North guys. We'll share him with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Listen, Mustangs.
Handshake meme.
What do you got? Huskies?
Yes.
Mustangs, Huskies, handshake meme. Yeah?
Huskies greater than Mustangs though as a pet.
Yeah, I don't think I want to keep
You on a wild Mustang?
I don't think I want to keep a horse in the house. Whose horse is that?
Maybe like a Shetland, like a
pony.
small horse.
Hey, careful, you'll be speaking out of existence at a next birthday party.
Hopefully your kids don't listen to the show. That's Michael Bruntz, Husker247. We appreciate it always.
Thanks.
Pleasure as always. See you guys.